understand whether that comes first before achieving concentration and meditation, or does the concentration and meditation help in that, like the chicken and egg. I find this a particularly interesting part because I find that my personal battle is a constant seeking of excitement and distraction. And then ultimately getting disappointed by what I go seeking or achieve with it. So yeah, I guess that's a common problem.
근데 그런 뒤가 되긴 저기 니 3대 녀블링 없은 거죠. 니 3대 녀블링 없은 거 아니 셈 쳐줘야 니 지와 아니 그거 가서 거기 니 객치기를 했어. 다디 삼랭기 냠랭 뭐시 없은 거스라 디 객잠도를 했으라 영어 삼랭기 냠랭 최신 백 없은 거스라 삼랭기 냠랭 세대 된 거지 죽나스라 아니 다다 먼저 지와 그거 니 셈 쳐줘야 가서 거라 디조 아니 디조 좀 도기로 했어.
삼랭이 냠랭 세대 된 거지나
냠랭 지나스라 디조 좀 도기로 했어. 아니
나도 직 삼랭이 냠랭 세대 된 거 보면서 the democracy so 생각하다 그래 가다다지 무슨 도가
대단님도 처음에 거기다 전화만서 괴발해줘라 괴발해디 센디스 남상 초초줘야다 저기 초조해야 될 시작이라 샘남서도 왕보 가서보다 자다한테 거나 되라 니스 초조나 아니 괴발 숙심 붙이기를 시기라 거기다 너 괴발해디 상관들이 당했던 먼저 넘주 신내는야다 공로 미과 지지도 때에 다시 체인데 좀 아니 샘나디스 감사로 지지기다 조와 뭐냐 감사로 지지해지다 어떻게 이 숙침부 중에 도스라 아니 근데 숙침부 중에 좀 아니 타마타마들 공기 냠는데라 이만 생활하고 차이도
근데 이 감사를 나가 파라티스 심볼리즘 기준 거야 세상에서 지나 이거 기준 하시야 자디가 수수 미파샤나로 가는 근디를 찍듯이 말이 남자가 자기 차례에 정도 두두가를 쉬고 두두자야 매죠. 그래도 그러네. 생각이 되어 무시기로. 두두가는 이제 남자 저게 세계로 이제 남자가 자기 차례에 나도 두두자는 생각에 감이 오셨습니다.
So then yes, when you come to cultivate your practice of concentration, and then you come to it when you're able to genuinely cultivate concentration, then there comes a point wherein you are able to overcome distraction, excitement, and dullness, and you do this through through employing mindfulness and awareness in these situations. So yes, these are things that in the process of your cultivation, then you begin to overcome this by constantly applying mindfulness and awareness in these situations. So as beginners, it is important to remember that when we sit down to meditate, when we become too excited, then the mind becomes a little bit too excited for its own good. And in the process of concentration, cultivating concentration, then the whole aim is to concentrate or place the whole attention on the object of meditation itself. So when you do that, there are instances wherein you begin to lose focus, or you're not able to place the attention wholly on the object of meditation due to excitement, dullness, and so forth. So as beginners, it's important to remember that you should not force yourself in these instances to kind of try to concentrate again and again on that. It's important to kind of know when to break the session as well. So you learn to take a break and try to refresh yourself a little bit, and then come again and try to have a more effective session in the next goal.
단단한 또 공부 미디가 돼 주는 거 이제 갈 거야. 에이 티퍼를 봐야라. 샤를 거는 저는 로는 티스를 이제 나서 진이도가 는 티스지 이대로 체크해서 니마지만 지위라는 갈 거야.
So then, this is the reason why we are instructed as beginners to kind of keep the meditation sessions as short as possible and do as many of these sessions as possible, rather than aiming to like sit down for a long period of time in the first go itself. So yes, this is important to keep in mind that as beginners, we will never there will be times when we do not feel like meditating at all. So then forcing yourself to meditate in these instances is not so effective. You need to take a break, go out, get some fresh air, and then like if you feel like meditating again, then you feel like a sense of freshness, vitality, and then you begin to meditate again. Then it's more effective in this manner. So then maybe rather than thinking about meditation sessions, then we can try to understand how like the way that the mind engages its object by thinking of the example of reading a text or a book. So if we can place our whole attention and we have that inclination in that moment to read this book mentally, then if we read a book, then we are able to kind of understand and we're able to retain this information and process it much better. But in instances wherein we do not really feel that inclined to read the book and we are not able to kind of place our concentration fully on the book and its contents, then even if we spend some hours reading the book, flipping through pages, then at the end we are not able to process the information really well and we are not able to retain that information as well. So from this example, we understand that as beginners it's important to kind of keep the sessions short and do it when you really feel like doing it. And now as I say this, I feel like from my own personal habit, then I have this habit of when I start reading a book, then I have to see the book through, like in one setting. This is a personal habit that I have. So as I say that you have to do these things, then it feels a little bit uneasy on my part to kind of impart these instructions, because this is a hard-built, inbuilt kind of habit that I have, that whenever I read something, then I have to finish it. I forget the tea that I have left here, and I kind of finish the whole thing in one go. So then our teachers used to stress that a gradual and consistent approach is much more effective in terms of studies, in terms of meditation. So this is a habit that I need to kind of do away with, and I feel a sense of hesitation in imparting these instructions to you, because as we remember, we talked about the example of Gandhiji having hesitation. So in this situation, I feel a little bit hesitant, but I know that this is a habit that I need to do away with. And so yes, for example, when we say that, can you begin to say that I will have all the food I need today, and then it will be enough for a whole month? This is not possible. You have to eat every day on these specific times in order to sustain yourself. So like that, if you are to sustain our practice, more sustainable practice, then we need a gradual and consistent approach.
I have a question about contemplation.
Mm.
So whenever I try to contemplate, I'm talking about like teachings, I feel lost or I don't know where to start from. So is there a particular way that we can start contemplating on the teaching? And also a little bit more about the analytical meditation because I've never heard about it.
디니 그런 지와디가 나면서 퇴성체오래를 송라스 나디가 나면서 단다 숨쉬러다 단다면서 일랍 치심베 단다면서 지다주라 디고라 아니 그런 사마다에 답시 지기스라 사마다에 답시 지기서 바니 딱 가와니 고츠 그래야지라 디스 마보지 시에다 마보지 시에서 바 디스 가와니 고츠를 쭈그래야 디세고 하고 민도스 근데 이제 앞서마대와로 차리도스 제자니 디 동네 가지 치고랬어 가와니 고츠를 해야 돼. 대단히 제네는 아주 제공 숨겨야 봤다. 가동 없습니다. 제공 내야 되니 같이 지는 것이 지금
그런 것들은 제가 다른 게 디테일가 나한테는 말로 나한테 보여요. 이제 저는 신제치라. 그러니까 무슨 땅이라 아니. 근데 디가는 상담 그래서 가르쳐야 된다는 데는 정말 디가는 상담 아니 수술 줄 습관은 이런 상담을 하게 돼. 디가는 상담. 근데 또 지금 내가 하려나 내가 좀 시식을 가르치는 게 내가 배뇌를 상상하는 건 변화서 저거를 주고 있는 거야. 저거 공부를 지구지게 그래. 저거 공부는 해도 가. 아무는 이미 가르쳐. 공부가 없나 그래. 아니 이제 뭐 보시다 집어치고
so then if you have a sense that that you feel lost when you begin to contemplate on the teachings, then it's important to kind of refer to the notes that you have made as well as the root text itself as a basis, as a reference, and then try to relate this to your own daily experiences first. If you do that, then you begin to you have the basis upon which you can begin to contemplate. Does it relate to my experiences? Is it so? And then you can try to then you can begin to try to ask questions. Why is this so? And so on and so forth. So relating it to your own personal experiences gives you the basis upon which you can contemplate on the teachings. And you need to, of course, make use of your own notes as well as the root text itself. And then analytical meditation is that rational analysis of your practice or of your cultivation. For example, when you say that we have to cultivate the practice of forbearance, then we begin to use reasoning to come to an understanding of why we need to come to that understanding and conviction that why is it important for me to cultivate forbearance as a practice. Then you begin to think about the positive effects of forbearance, the negative effects of forbearance.
내가 컴퓨터로 지금 배송 쉬우느라 지금 미지 지금 나보지 컴퓨터랑에 조금 더 내가 그런 미기 슬라이드를 미스 꼭 간잘 보려는 거. 봐. 거기 지금 책도 들라서 이제 미드 나오면 그래. 장아지도. 따지 지행이잖아. 시리키 엄마시다. 책도 보지는 되는 게 된 당신 강의 팀에서 아무도 책도 들려니. 꼭 들려냐? 안디가 상담 이제가 컨트롤 강요를 주고 점점 코나 가진 뜻이 라인 가상에만 되는 다른 얘기는 코나가 가지고 있는 문제를 치고 상담을 때 이치 주주디가 또 컨트롤에 멤버야 될 수도 있다. 봐. 근데 이제 지금이야. 기승은 하기 컨트롤 지나게 있는 컨트롤 나서 이 시대로 상관 컨트롤 나서 이 심이 받아. 봐. 그 비디오 컨트롤 나는 하시나 또 거기 뒤져고 하잖아요. 라발라고 라말라고 같이 짜지 당하는 예서 미디어. 아, 코로나상이 심이죠. 아, 안 되더라고요.
So, for example, let's say that someone addresses you harshly and someone uses harsh words, speaks to you very harshly. And then in this moment, then we can begin to contemplate through analytical meditation on where does this anger arise from and where is this anger directed towards. Is it towards those harsh words itself, or is it directed towards the person who is speaking this harsh word? Sometimes we develop a sense of resentment, and we develop a sense of dislike, and we become very disturbed even when we see the person themselves who spoke harshly towards us. So through analytical meditation, you begin to see like where is this anger directed towards, and if it is directed toward that person, then you begin to kind of analytically look for the basis upon which we begin to direct this anger. Like, is it directed towards this person? Is it directed towards his body? Is it directed towards his hand, his leg? And then when we begin to analyze in this manner, then we see that this person towards which we direct our anger themselves are not really established absolutely in the way that we think they are. So this is the kind of gradual process of analytical meditation in order to overcome our anger.
Just an example. One about like speak loud. So when I start to contemplate, usually the patterns, like the usual way of thinking of the mind comes up, like the usual thoughts or things which worry me or things which I notice. So it's difficult. So I think it's a practice to develop newer patterns because it requires a positive approach towards things. And to give an example, like yesterday we were in a cafe and there was someone who was speaking very loudly, and I was with someone who was very sensitive, and they were having problem with them speaking loudly, and I was I was trying to empathize with both. Like maybe the person who was speaking loudly was not aware, or maybe it's their habitual way of talking, and I was also empathizing with the person who's not feeling comfortable with the other person saying so loudly, and maybe it was really irritating them. And I didn't know which side to take or what should I. And I was feeling discomforted by both. So in this case, what can one do?
네, 그런 게다 삼로당에 두섬 지역업 섬스라, 또 삼로당에 지라, 삼로당에 급섬 바니 저디 그런 게다 막 삼로당에서 뭐 넘치는 소속이 삼로 치어서 지라, 삼로당 이만에도 검지도 숙청고 찾아가, 제산도 단다 삼로당에다 두섬 지역에디 아니 니마기 삼로 치어서다 삼로당당이 검지지라, 대다 많이 배고 삼로 치어서 싸와, 삼로당당 싸와. 뭐 딘데치니 냠년치에는 콘수추어치에가 뭐 딘데라 베기유스 딘데라 베즈치기유스 베나차샤나 가산도 그런니 캐페지부터 있어 딜라니 차다톤데 좀 아니 미치기 깨서고 도저서고 깨침부자데도스 니 코로님도 조겐기 미디에니 소화는 거 시우레 되어스 니 제상 버저디 깨쇼 좀 부자인데서 뭐 디스 미디어와 좀 있어 소화는 거예요 딱갑지 되는 거 내당들라니 그런 게 니자라 삼시치가 다시 치겠어. 파주미디 베제베제 그런 남진이 계제 시당 다가라 인지리스. 이 베제베제 고 도나스 미기르스 정말 믿다가 지어리. 이 신치 초신진의 삼나당은 니 단다. 그런 좋아하는 거 지죠. 미디어 차기라. 어디니 딱 이제 그런 미디어 차기라. 좋아하는 거예요. 니자라 삼시치 다시 치듯이 타마타마들 소소에 semnadis medioaro chagido was. Ni takap de deux moments dans l'année de Chauves, ça m'a chier sur le dos de Chauves.
C'est ça. Et une fois bah, c'est un mix sama kuna de. 그래서 그나서 아버님하고 말하는 거에 이제 초코치기 깨치기 개보로다 개보로가 이제 만들대로 그까지도 따면 집어지죠. 정말 집어다에 매일 이렇게도 생각나서 너무 싫어. 그래서 그때는 어떻게 개보 맞춰 사실 하시야 생각을 싫어야지 그만고 있는 소소들이 하게 되게 계속 시시하게 지금 칼로 맞아 가지고 내만의 집을 봐 하시기 계속 시주 다가랑 다다가 다수다가랑 샤시가 하시기 네가 디스면의 딜이 진짜 딜이 나도 뭐한다 봐 가지고 가르쳐는 남이다 사만다래 개야 티 하길래 내만의 집을 다 차다다 디게 되게 상상다가 가지고 집을 봐 하잖아 근데 로진이 나를 오니까 미 상관에 하초가 이번에 하고 봐 근데 하고는 스스로 지부디 간게 사실 사실 그거 계시 되는 남이를 제일 하길래 미국에 상도 코마도 봐 그거 시기라 그저께 칼로 생각이 남이 지부 되게 날에 단위자기 쇼인제 검은 사이즈 상담도 있잖아 하기도 깨끗잖아 가래 시대시라라 그저께 쇼쇼 남자서 봐야 하래 봐 근데로 상담은 아닌데 근데 되게 내가 치료가 사실이 점점 수수까지 되는 거 팀만 많이 봐 미기 상담을 인데를 샤 수술을 내셔래 라인에 좀 이제 지혜는 거 빼기신 거 봐. 수술이랑 수술도 지바로 느끼지. 모두 양남이랑 시야나 오늘 지게 밀라 아닌데 좀 와서 봐. 다 드셔셔들잖아. 근데 그것도 또 지혜는 거 밀라라나다 만난다. 수술이 너무 싫어.
So then the way that the human mind works is really funny in this how the human mind works and it relates to situations is very funny. For example, as you gave that example, then in the nunnery, and in monasteries, there is someone called a discipline in charge, who is in charge of the discipline in the monastery. And when this person begins to address the whole assembly, then even though he's addressing the whole assembly of monks or nuns, but then the way that different nuns or monks relate to that particular address is very different. Some people have a pronounced sense of emotion when this person begins to address the whole, reprimanding the whole assembly or scolding the whole assembly. Some people have a very pronounced sense of emotion or a sense of guilt. Some people do not really care about what the discipline in charge is saying. Some people begin to analyze, why is he saying this in the first place? There must be some reason, and they begin to think more about this. Whereas some people just treat it as just a speech addressed to the whole assembly, and they do not really begin to think about how it relates to them or at all, because they haven't committed any transgressions at all. So this is the way that even though the words being spoken are the same and it's being addressed to the whole assembly as a group, but the way that human beings relate, or the mind relates to this, is very different. This highlights the point that we all have very relative experiences due to the way that we relate to outer situations and our outer stimuli. So then in your situation, then situation is very similar. So in your situation, there are two people, one who is very sensitive, and the other who is unaware of his loudness. So in that situation, what is lacking is common sense now. Common sense in the sense that the person who is speaking loudly, unaware, lacks the awareness that he is disturbing other people's peace. Then the person who is too sensitive is lacking the appreciation that maybe some people speak loudly and it's just their habit. So then if you have this common sense to accept this, then you do not, if you are either of these two persons, then the situation doesn't arise. So as you are a third person observing that situation, then then you need to come to that realization first, that as you begin to kind of empathize with both people and have concerns or try to be empathetic to both persons, you need to realize that this situation calls for common sense. And then you yourself, whenever when you are out in public, in a public space, if you begin to speak too loudly, then be sensible, not to speak too loudly. And then if you begin yourself to become very sensitive to people talking loudly, then know that it's just someone's habit in the end of the day. And sometimes they are helpless, sometimes they are unaware too. So you yourself should take the lesson from that situation to have a sensible approach, not to get too offended, not to be totally unaware too.
Can I ask a question?
Mm.
You said that you needed to choose a side. And my question is, why do you need to choose a side?
Your own side. Not to choose a side, but I was getting disturbed by both because the sensitive person, I was maybe as they were like connecting it with like it was affecting me, like the way they were connecting that person with some other things, like where they are from, or like why they're so loud, or it was affecting me because I was feeling, oh, are they hating them because of this thing? And then with the person talking loudly, I was trying to like I was sympathizing with the person talking loudly because they didn't knew about it or they were not aware about it. But again, their loudness was too much and it was disturbing the person I was with. So not taking side, but I was.
You just use those words, and I think if you use the words, maybe that's something that you feel like you need to. So I'm really just asking, not in a judgmental way at all, but for you to kind of think for yourself, why do you need to say they're right and they're wrong? Instead, they're both right in their own way.
How can I don't get affected by that?
Yeah.
It was affecting me. Even when I knew that the person who was loud it's out of habit, but it was affecting me again. So I don't want it to get affected by it.
Yeah.
So like, why did you ask me this?
Why did I ask it? It actually raised something completely different in me, in the fact that I think people feel like there is like a, I don't know, disagreement, a conflict or whatever, and people feel like they need to choose a side. And I'm relating it to wars that are currently happening. And I see a lot of people say, you need to be on the good side of history. And everyone is talking about a different side, by the way, right? Both sides saying the same thing, but they talk about their own side. And for me, I don't want to choose any side. My side is everyone. My side is end suffering for everyone. I don't care if you're Jewish or Muslim or Russian or Ukrainian or whatever. And just when you said it, it kind of raised that thing in me, which is not related, but I think the thing is, in many ways, we feel like we need, to choose one side, and we completely ignore the other person that is obviously suffering as well for probably different reasons. So yeah, just something that I wanted to tell, like maybe to think about that as well.
Another reason was because I was feeling discomfort because I was not able to respond to the person I was with who was feeling sensitive, because I was empathizing with the other person who was ignorant. Like so I think the discomfort was because I was not able to respond what to say.
Yeah. Can I say, sorry, is that okay that we have this conversation? I heard recently about the difference between empathy and compassion. And empathy, we put ourselves in other person's shoes and we actually feel the pain. But in compassion, we don't. We have compassion, we want to help them, we want to end their suffering, but we don't necessarily have to relate to the exact experience that they have. And I find it really fascinating because I think many times we suffer with the people that suffer, and then we sink with them when we empathize, and we don't know how to get out of it. And I mean, in this case, maybe you don't have to say, yes, they're really loud, they're really annoying, but just, oh, I understand that it bothers you, or whatever. So to have compassion to the person that, yeah, you're bothered, that's cool, that you're bothered, that's absolutely fine, but you don't have to agree with whatever they said or to have the same feeling as well, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And maybe just go and move to a different table, if possible, and not suffer from that.
지양 소원은 뭐 슈침보래라. 디디즈 뭐 소원은 뭐 뭐냐면 자동화 레데라. 디디즈 뭐 소소메 되어 소기도스. 디메 되어 소기라. 파조디 계사오지 디메 소원은 뭐요 봐. 디스 되오면 소나. 파조들레 미케 사와들레 삼시치에 다시 당. 딜라에 미게 양 소원은 뭐들레 타마타마들레 소소디스. 메디어 소소스. 아니 또 고랑이 넘나 갈라고요. 디 랩사로 주라데. 메디어기 랩사기 자와로 디네 먼저 가지고 있는 내단으로 데로 질레나스라. 뇨다이나레 데로 가르치는 레나야스라. 가지고 있는 초직 파시엔으로 나와서. 디니 초인 디 초야가 데 초직 랭고에 저치 랭고레라 상로디 코르네라. 니 랑신게 니 메디어 차기 그랬어. 디 지어디 뭐 땅사. 니 뭐이 지어디 타기 다라이스. 아니 소소 타마타마라다 내담 담에다 질리디라. 아니 미파소 퀸스 뇨자에 저기 되는데 되게 소소라 메디어나 소소라 슈진 메디어 슈진 말레바 같이 해야죠.
근데라 아주 원액이 주주고 상담하다. 먼저 차단 공수는 정하지 않아. 지금 주는 하고 있다. 그 너네 미시 시와 들려 아버지에 있는 손가락이 나는 것 믿을 남주인 통에 믿을 많이 받아 차. 그 차방이 거다 잠깐 휴게는 이렇게. 봐. 나도 이래 그런데 여자가 무슨 놈이 빼고 저리 공부서라 빼. 신나서 두더래. 남이 빼 청구에는 데니스 시고야. 공부처럼 뭔가 처해야 돼. 니스리다. 봐. 다가 집어라. 나라서기 차단 뭐가 땅이나. 나라 차대. 봐. 수술을 시대 굉장히 이거라. 직칼로 미디어 고지에 봐. 공부다 두수기 상황인 것은 미드 따다는. 봐. 따단다 저에게 미를 파다리거든. 이거 통도. 봐. 나라서기 추서는 따가래. 딱 같이 쌈찍 갔다는 데 데로 내가 치료이나. 알레 다 무슨 놈들이 치료도 차단 뭐가 이미 따지니 미지나 정말 수련하는 사람다야. 이제 이렇게 조금씩 이제 코로나에 대한 시기로 가기로 연락하리 그런 기회는 지겨워. 봐. 지금 그 머리병 미파이들 누구요? 봐. 머리병. 나 대쇼 코로나인데 왜 처음 뭐지? 아 공부 찾아. 봐. 이게 무슨지 말이야. 안디. 맞다 따고 이제 때문에 주디 쿠파 무슨 쇼지 내내 뭐야 게 봐. 주들의 수술을 하셔도 하게 되는 공부하는 거예요. 아니 미인이나는 이래로 지내셨잖아. 다 정말 수술해야 되는 거서야 돼. 아니 그래 그냥 걔만 되게 지금 그래. 그러니 이제 이렇게 전부 적어야 돼. 그런 내가 이제 걔랑 말하고 미스 컨텐츠인데 이렇게 비셔면 돼야 말이야. 나는 자동차라서. 아니 시작하시 이렇게 하다 this is been someone to go with 애들이 눈 좋고. 그러나 이 공부하는 게 파이들 나와시라 말이 트라이니 기차부에 나게 시에를 시는 뒤다. 그럼 계속으로 들리기 답변도 써주는 이렇게 뭐 이렇게 뜻을 가라니 비도 무슨 데오 뭐 주제만 도 차스통이 되어라. 그럼 뒤가 마시기 내가 가리 이내야 저저세. 그럼 나는 주제만 공부 상가 쉬우지도. 그럼 소소 깔면지 소소 대사야 그래 갖고 저 하기 비교로 그 기대로 누가 정당되는 하나서 때에 야들이 개만이 야가도 콜레제션은 파게 되는 파게 돼서 막가 수수에 있는 분이 아버지 치즈 기본이다. 아니 미기 통원에 말아 야보통 디사이트 맞더라. 수수 아버지는 스스로를 떠나지 미기 보지라고 같이 알아서 아마 그 그리 이제 리뷰진들이 그래서 진짜 알아서 봐. 근데 로이스는 그 하나 다 산다수라 그러니까
So then, yes, normally when we say that we develop a sense of unease or a sense that we are suffering in a situation, then from the Buddhist perspective, it comes due to our afflictions such as attachment, aversion, as well as ignorance. So when we are under the influence of these afflictions such as attachment, aversion, as well as ignorance, then we are no longer the calm people that we are. We are no longer the rational people that we are. And then we begin to act in ways that harm ourselves as well as others. And if not harm, then disturb ourselves as well as others. This is evident in the fact that when we say that normally, sometimes when we say that normally he's a very calm, nice guy, but sometimes when he's angry, he's very dangerous. He's not the same guy. So then we lose all sense of like rationality, all sense of embarrassment when we are under the influence of these afflictions. And now this is important to first realize that all our sense of way of relating to experiences as disturbing, painful, pleasure, or so on comes from this sense of attachment and aversion as well as ignorance within our own mind streams. This is first important to realize. And then if we're able to accept this and come to an understanding that all our experiences of pain, pleasure, and so forth comes from this afflictions, then now we can try to relate this to your particular situation. And now in that particular situation, first, if we have that understanding and acceptance that as human beings, we are liable to be under the influence of these afflictions, then we begin to relate to this situation a little bit differently, saying that due to ignorance, which forms the basis of this person's being unaware that he's being so loud, that he so much that he's disturbing other people's peace, it comes from that affliction of ignorance, which contributes to him being unaware. And then when you relate it to your own friend who you have come with, then you begin to relate that the fact that she is so sensitive to these noises comes from a lack of forbearance. Because she has such aversion to people speaking so loudly. So then if we are able to look at this situation in this manner, then we realize that as human beings, we are liable to be under the influence of afflictions. So then such situations are bound to present themselves again and again in our life. So we do not have a sense of like personal, emotional investment in the situation in the first place. So when you do that, so then you look at the situation a little bit differently at that point. And now how can you begin to affect this situation? So then it's important to know that there are things that you can change and there are things that you cannot help. So rather than like trying to personally be so involved in this situation, look close to your friend and see if she is open to listen to your own perspective. And then if she's open to your own perspective, then begin to try to console her, saying that this disturbance that you feel, this sense of unease that you feel, you don't have to bear it through your whole life. It's just like for the duration of this time while we're in the cafe. And this is the world we live in. There are so many different people with so many different habits. So we are bound to run into many people who begin to irritate us. So it's not advisable to be so sensitive all the time. So it's important if she is open to receive that kind of open herself to that kind of perspective, then try to console her in this manner. And then maybe the situation improves not just for yourself, but for the person who is so sensitive too. And so this is important, realizing that. And so then now herein comes the topic of cultivating forbearance. And now we need to understand that forbearance is not just overcoming a sense of irritation. For example, let's say we're traveling in a bus, and when we're traveling in a bus or in a public transport, then all of us want some sort of comfort. We want the best seats for ourselves. But if we are always kind of putting that at the front of our priorities in public transport at the expense of other people who are like uncomfortable, then it doesn't make sense. So forbearance need to extend more than like just overcoming a sense of irritation. For example, if you begin to offer your seat to someone who is pregnant, someone who is elderly, and someone who is traveling with kids, then it makes sense in that situation to bear through your own sense of irritation and offer that seat to someone else. So all of this comes from a basic acceptance of that. As I want comfort for myself, other people want comfort for themselves too. So you begin to instances where you can exchange or offer your own comfort for others, then you begin to do that. Yes.
지난게 주변에 지나서 나도 거기서 내가 친구들이 주고 있다.
Mm.
네, 이때 내가 친구들 저거 공부한 거 그래서 무슨 공부 싫어. 제 친구도. 근데가 내가 담아줘 이게 말하지 지나서 내가 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 진짜 담아 가서 상상한 진짜. 이 지능이 되시죠.
So then, even though the issue at hand seems very trivial, it's just a small disturbance in a coffee shop, but it connects to a very important point about how we can begin to cultivate forbearance. So rather than just feeding you like this is the method, maybe it's better to hear from you all, like how would you approach this situation, and how would you try to how would you approach this situation?
I think my challenge when it comes to forbearance and just general acceptance arises when I'm in nature. I try my best to spend like an hour a day in silence in nature, in a meditative state, not necessarily meditating per se. And in India especially, depending on the location, I've found a lot of interruptions with people coming into that space that I like to carve out for myself. And it's either with like music or loud talking, whatever it is, and that's when I have to make an important choice, I could either stay in equilibrium and acceptance of that situation and find a way for myself to still enter a meditative state, regardless of what the environment is providing me. Or, okay, yes, and that would be like forbearance, I guess, towards the people around me. And then I've also confronted a situation where I was with a friend who was with me, her position was that, this is not the place for music, and this is not the place for them to be behaving this way. And so we would be validated to ask them to turn it down, because it's not the right place for it. So I guess my question is that what's that line, forbearance and also, giving yourself some of that comfort that you'd like to share, but also give yourself the benefit of.
Yes. 네 그런 남주니 준드네 주즈직스 코스모데야 아니 주즈직스 남주니 신나다랑 중기 코리드르데 답시치스 네 제거에 좀선데 소소 공무에서 맞아내서라 공무에서 맞아내야서라 공자들서 바니 소로로 주라 어디 주인치도 있어 공자에게 소와 스미네다 주라 어디 주인치도 있어 다디 제인데서 바니 노바다면들 참들서 믹스 자가나스 아니 니마치가 어디 근데 지혜지지서 자가나나 디스카니 슈치 묻히기도스 베는 자신은 니 담람이 주도스 계자베로 아니 시에다 로드데 슈치 보도하이로 아니 담에다 치데 소르드 치즈만 디스 카부차이도스 고랑기 산도 담나데 디스 담용기 산도 담에 답시 치이스 아니 소소하니 최고의 대치 미래 쉬우쉬우지 봐야 맞아 야마지 아니 바다 쉬우쉬우라고 맞아 소소소소니 가르치고의 코스미되고의 공제에 답시 치기도 공제에 답시 치기도 어디 서바기 차이 유시기리스 다 이나야 아니 한 초신지는 다난 고랑기 로바로 니만 치면로 제설에 내 조보로 해라 드르지게네 드르니난 직태도서 뭐아니 네 간속에 니 건설을 가나 되기어스 계속 개체 못 도주시고 맞잡스라 준솔로다 시에들 슈치고 마동을 양나 되기어스 가는 코리아 데라 준솔 로당사 게 도주자서 말해라나 나들 초발했어 어디 가기도스 가전 좀 소소 흘려진 데니 되기어스 아니 딱 디니바라가 참디 간데 심고랬다 쇠바 몸에 참 가기로 했으라 수수수수 흘려니 쌤 되고신데 밥에 부러진 데니 되기어라 디바라가 참도 어디 간데 심고랬어 디바라는 도순 배식식도스
알아라. 니는 나와 대응 됐어. 당연히 먼저 했다가 중수 먼저 원래스 레벨은 차고 당초 디자인 컴버 이슈도 그리고 지혜 친구 쉬고 당들 장수제게는 가리는 하우스라 이마다 벌써 땅 됐다 이마다 때 비치서 이만 정말 그런 것들을 봐야 다른 것들을 먼저 나눠 치고래 지금 시디가 너무 있고 맞아서 가고 싶은 거로 되고 치료를 좀 하고 가는 스스로 근데 이 상승이 용어라 다음도 수도 시험에 좀 이些나야 더给家的能不起的뭐 됐으면 돼요 네가 또 근데 그때 먼저 이제 거의 내 되는 다른 시도 좀 말해서 제일 그냥 들어 봐시 얘 배도 그런 야가 그래서 뭐 내게 들어 먼저 컴바 가고 얘는 얘는 z르지 이게 그런데 달라도 지도도 돼 알아서 해서 땡땡땡 주치도 한 번으로 짝을 놓치죠 이게 이게 걔는 네가 상마다 그냥 가래 장편에 잘 가르치고 있는데 네가 상사는 깨끗이는 건 있어 네가 깨져 되게 양지 보러 통해서 근데 원래 이제 시작아 제가 해서 장고야 장소서 얘 가르려면 네가 상마다 팀을 주는 하게 잡고 고민이 그리고 먼저 뒤자리에 네가 봐서는 막 보니로 아니 공로질라 너 네가 너무 치료 다니로 나와셔야 그 땅도 땅으로 말할 때 스스로 너무 주시 내가 뭐 가르치는 네가 나오는 거 장고야 장고 봐야 더 치고 치시는 그게 다 그렇고 이렇게 너무 치고 되더라
So it's really a matter of like paying it no mind in the end when you begin to think about these situations. For example, when I was in Varanasi and we had Varanasi, then the place where we were staying, the neighbors used to blast music, loud music, and we thought that when we first heard it, then we thought that maybe it's a wedding procession or something, but this just but this kept happening, and then we realized that it's just not a wedding procession, and then like it's so loud that sometimes we feel as if like the walls will break, the house itself will break. So at that point, it was impossible to kind of like focus on our studies because we were used to like studying in a monastic setup wherein the environment is very conducive, very peaceful. Studying in the classrooms or debating in the courtyards. So when we were in this kind of environment, then it was really hard for us to first like kind of concentrate on our studies in the first place. And then we begin to right above us. We had a classmate who was an Indian, and then he was normally a very calm, peaceful guy. And so then we asked him, like, does this not bother you at all, like this music? Doesn't it affect like your studies? And then he said that it doesn't matter. Don't think about it. Pay no mind to it. Just focus on what you have to do. And then when I heard that, then like I took that advice to my heart. And then I tried to concentrate on my studies. And initially it was hard, but after a while, like even though there was that loud music, as you begin to concentrate wholly on your studies, then the noise, the music itself begins to disappear because you're so concentrated on your own studies, and you like, develop that concentration in your studies. And then you're not so disturbed by the music anymore after a while. You get used to it, and then when you concentrate, the noise like disappears after a while. But normally, like our reaction is to kind of confront the situation immediately. And when we do that, then like the way our mind works is like as we feel that we are being disturbed by this noise, then we become very irritated. And due to that sense of irritation, then in Buddhism we call this conceptual thoughts. Conceptual thoughts begin to impose a sense of irritation, anger onto the situation itself, which exacerbates the situation and our own sense of irritation. So if we are able to kind of dissociate ourselves from the situation by paying it no mind and concentrating on what we have to do, then this kind of exacerbation of the situation and and our own pronounced sense of irritation and disturbance is mitigated and disappears after a while. Yes. So it's important to also realize that some cultures are generally more loud. For example, the Indian culture. So we need to have a sense of cultural acceptance as well as cultural sensitivity too. We cannot always expect others to understand us, our own cultural sensitivity or our own cultures. In India, from generation to generation, like this is how it is. The culture itself is loud. For example, like in the West, traffic rules are so strict and nobody really honks at every turn, but in India it's a little bit different. In that way, India is much more open-minded in a sense, wherein like it's part and parcel of like being on the road when you're in traffic. In India, everybody shouts, everybody honks, but they do not do it with a sense like, wow, this person is like, inflicting harm on me. It's just part and parcel of being on the Indian roads. So this is the kind of acceptance we need in India generally. And then also regarding to like this loud celebrations, it's just part and parcel of their culture. So they do not do it with an intention to kind of disturb your peace or to kind of like irritate you. It's just the way the culture is. So we need to have an acceptance of that too, and we need to be sensitive about that part of their culture too, rather than always expecting them to conform to your own sense of like, sensitivity all the time. So if we do that, if we have that acceptance and understanding, then it helps. That understanding helps to kind of mitigate our sense of being offended, irritated, and angered at every turn. So yeah, similarly, not just the Indian culture, like the Tibetan culture has its own like things. The Western culture, the European culture, all have different ways of approaching things. So we need to be sensitive to these things and not be offended like at every turn, saying that they need to change this, we need to change this. Questions? So still the same question to the group. So in that cafe situation, how would you begin to approach it?
How would you or how did you?
Okay.
I had a similar situation, by the way, in Nepal. Not by locals, actually. We were a group of 4 people. We had a Momo Fest. And there were 2 older Westerner guys that put in the restaurant, they put very loud jazz, which is fine. But one of them was playing with this, I don't know how you call it, thing that makes a lot of noise that you hold like that, like a shaker. And my friend sat very, like, just near him, and it really drove her crazy. And we couldn't really talk, like we couldn't hear each other. It was quite annoying, but because it was really in her ear, it annoyed her a lot. And she really could not be there basically. So I kind of took the task to actually tell him, and I took all my politeness and kindness and told him, hey, it's really difficult for us to hear each other. Do you mind, stopping for a bit? And he got really angry and went on, and then at the end he told me, okay, I'll do you a favor and I'll take a break. I said, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. And it was like the sweetest I could be. And then it was fine, but in that situation, even though we could not say anything, but we were all very disturbed by that. So I did choose, and I usually do choose to say something, but I do try to say it in a very nice way and say, just a request, if you don't mind, can you please? And he obviously did mind, which was also fine, and honestly his anger didn't let it touch me. Like, you're allowed to be angry if you want to. But yeah, that was the situation. And then he looked at us, he rolled his eyes at us all night long, which was quite funny, to be honest. But
네 그런 게 단다 딜레. 그러는 뭐에 중요해서 이제 다 고치다 싶다지. 근데 바이올라 주디서 뭐 아니 네 뭐뭐도 사와도 있어. 이 사와는 나 주디서 뭐 아니 gembo 지제와르도스 유미랑 말도스. gembo니 네 지기 비게 네 먼저 시당사여라. 시당사네 시 기준 불러셔도스라. 대단님도 신다디게 무슨 주시당도서 착착착되죠. 법자로도. 근데지 라와 이유도스. 니 시행문이 기획차고도 네가 거기다 법자 이유도 뭐 디스 잠도 있어라. 니 엄청난 배 수부 있을 때. 자지라. 니 그러니 로버니디 기저시는 파서야 고기미도스. 이렇게 차고도스. 니 제상 그런 로버디 다 지나나만도 레마르스. 근데 뭐랑이 라야치 있어 본줄. 아니 봐 라야치가 좀 기모들 안에 법자 동대게 줘라. 콜라드네 가장 보치더라. 니 시행해 보치. 네 굳이 딱 chance 아니 스무 마찬가지라 네 먼저 디스케저시에 봐서 가보자기도 고기민도스 네 진짜 디스케 총수체도 그래요. 까만디기를 라이브스 가져들 항상 프로그램스 아니 지금 뭐 라벨라벨로 뭐 케이스 얘네 그런 롱스라들이 지금스 네 타마다마들 거기 딱 야야 춘소를 인바차 쇼라 당나 발생된 게 시에 가서스 제가 갑자기 좀 많이 참참 쉬고 해야 되겠죠. 그럼 남주 주는데 되게 미디어로도 자스무레나 시기스 시대에서만 있는 가져고 시켜고 뒤치에 되겠죠.
지난들이 가사에 대해서 이내는 진짜 춘주지를 넘서 이 전부 제가 애기면서 내가 지금 상담과 부자로 되는 말 그대로 수석하면서 꼭 기도 건드셔. 나도 옆에도 칠레기 보면 무치는 나도 이제 됐지. 지금 그 하마고 여기라. 하마고리 무슨 것이라. 근데 중단이 그래. 이렇게 시분들 이제 남자의 패키지 봐. 난도 그 얘기 몇 번 했다 와도 몇 다라이네. 수수 됐어. 지웠다는 야라도. 봐. 사실 다 하나 되고 뭐. 이제 부자야 정말 이제 상하 심하심하지야. 이미지도 그거나 해야 되고 그. 근데도 타만 제 얘기 좀 제생각 이 지금 타만 가지고 그래라. 타만 뒤체 얘기 막 비슷한데 시비를 남주 너무 많이 걸려. 인지민지기 유도 되게 자동화 제색이 유도 인지민지 체대고 심하심을 상하로 가지고 왜 봐 보여야 돼. 아니 거다 그냥 잡으실 나야로 지지는 거 마시고 아니 좀 기승 많이 해는 소소한다. 잠깐 소소고다가 디 맞지 맞자다 그냥 진실을 타만 멈춰 그 강의 묘수.
So the reason that why I'm asking you like how would you approach this is to kind of think about methods through which we can overcome these kind of situations. And of course, it makes sense when it's too much to kind of be forthright and confront them. But then this is not to say that, usually we develop a sense that at the slightest irritation we begin to confront people and then try to confront people and act out of anger. This is not advised at all. If it gets too much, of course, it makes sense in situations to kind of confront them and talk to them. And then, as you say, to talk sweetly, gently, and so forth. But the point that we need to keep in mind is that sometimes there are things that we cannot change and then they begin to irritate us, and then they begin to anger us. And then if we keep like trying to act out of anger in these moments, then since they are the object of our angers itself, then then the anger gets like precipitated in a sense. It gets blown out of proportion. So in that situation, it's kind of foolish to kind of insist that we have to stay in that place, even though they are playing this music and it's irritating us. We cannot. There are plenty restaurants around so it makes sense sometimes not to like confront and just go and change restaurants. So this is also important to realize. Like there are different methods, and we need to make a wise decision regarding the methods we choose to try to overcome our sources of irritation.
I can say in that situation, I was very proud of myself that I actually was not angry at all. I approached it like I understood him, but so I approached it with kindness as much as I could. But yes, I agree with everything.
Kad the zaman Quran povaches us, and Quran ki simpuna na konga de desane nikola kijada de shakatomis. Kajomidi kade namji kali chitana is Quran sem dinne konga chikasa.
괜히 거기서 미상만 맞지. 균 두고 싶다. 미상 이나 유지들아. 상하이 지나이나 리에로 가라상이. 미세는 가라 직질 때리 있는 저도 미니 두고 싶은 데 나한테 내려 대면도 마셔나나 마셔나나 직질을 저어요. 아, 진짜리 남쪽이 진짜지도 거기서 내다로 다 미세래. 이내야 네 이놈들은 많이 저거 보다가 지가 돌아. 때 계속 먹는데 뭐도 있더라. 공동구조의 기준에 지원하여가 제시야 소소도 감지 표시다 내시는 저도는 모니터링이 나라서 밀어 초도 집에 나줘주는 뒤로 대표주다.
So this is very good and commendable because we need to understand that anger cannot overcome anger, or anger cannot pacify anger. So if we like act out of anger in that situation, then the situation blows up, and it's now like not only the two parties who are like angry and disturbed, the whole environment in the restaurant get disturbed. The restaurant owner like has a headache now, so like everybody is now disturbed. So if you approach the situation without giving in to afflictions such as anger, then all this you save like all these people who are interdependent or interdependent on that situation from like suffering the consequences of anger. So it's making use of this basic intelligence that we have to act wisely in situations. So we need to make full use of this basic intelligence. So we stop here, and if there are any questions, we'll pick up in the sessions in the afternoon.